Chairman Gonzalo Refuted, English Marxist, 2022. Posted on medium.com September 1, 2022, at English Hojaist. Chairman Gonzalo Refuted. A quick summary of the subject at hand for those who are unaware of who this figure was. Chairman Gonzalo was the leader of the Marxist-Leninist Maoist guerrilla force Shining Path in Peru, as well as leader of the PCP Shining Path, Sendero Luminoso, a declared split from the revisionist and more mainstream PCP. From the mid-1970s onwards, the party and its forces waged a protracted people's war and gained vast swaths of land, which caused the illegitimate and rightist president of Peru, Alberto Fujimori, to launch draconian measures to combat suspected communists, such as the Putis massacre, Fujimorzo, and Plan Verde, which in turn caused tit-for-tat acts of sabotage and atrocity. Whereas the Fujimori regime was guilty of grave crimes against humanity such as mass killings against the indigenous, the Shining Path would also go on overtly violent sprees, such as mass killings in the Ayacucho region, more famously the Lucamarca massacre of 1983. After his capture by state forces, he subsequently entered a state of trial and retrial by the courts, and was interred in a maximum security naval base off the coast of Callao, where he remained till he passed away on September 11, 2021. Today, his followers follow a doctrine of Marxism-Leninism-Maoism, believing it to be the highest stage of Marxism in Gonzalo thought, believing his main contributions to be guiding thought, and the universality of Mao Zedong's protracted People's War on People's Socialist Albania, an error from start to finish. In his interview with El Diario, the following subject, the question of the existence of socialist countries, or proletarian states, is brought up, quote, El Diario, Chairman, do you think there are socialist countries in the world today? Chairman Gonzalo, frankly no, I don't think so. There are those who believe, for example, that Albania is a socialist country. I'd say to those who believe that Albania is socialist that they should study carefully, for example, the documents of the 8th Congress of the Party of Labor of Albania. That would be a good thing to study, because it says there that the center of world reaction is US imperialism and Soviet imperialism. What happened to the two enemies we have to fight? It was always just words. With Hoji himself it was just words because he always wrote more about fighting Yankee imperialism than social imperialism. Comment. See original source for footnote. Gonzalo tells us to study the 8th Congress. Great. But I would be remiss to think that the chairman didn't even take his own advice. We can tell that he refers to this extract, quote, in one way or the other, in this or that form, all the peoples encounter the interference of and are threatened by the aggressive policy of American imperialism, which represents the greatest capitalist power of our time and the main defender of the bourgeois imperialist system. Anver Hoxha, report to the 8th Congress of the Party of Labor of Albania. The 8 Nentori Publishing House, Tirana 1982, p. 166. Before we handle the chairman's slander properly, I would certainly like an explanation as to how this observation was incorrect in any way, shape or form. For as long as empires have come and gone, no other nation has successfully veiled its crimes against humanity, both against the indigenous and against nations abroad, with such impunity as the United States. This first claim from Gonzalo can be disproven simply by analyzing the collapse of the Polish People's Republic, which was happening at the same time, when the Titowite revisionist Edward Gierek and his cronies allowed Russian and Western loans to suck the nation dry for capitalist gain, and while unions were growing day by day, with the massacre of 44 people at Gdansk shipyard still fresh in their memories. The United States, figuratively and literally, butchered and coerced its way towards international hegemony and succeeded in it, and was clearly emerging ahead of the USSR as the greatest capitalist superpower. Moreover, this thesis was fully confirmed in less than a decade, when the USSR collapsed under the weight of oligarchs and mass privatization through shock therapy measures and unchecked criminal bureaucracy. Ironically, I believe Chairman Gonzalo should study Mao Zedong's reactionary three worlds theory, where he allied himself with blatant imperialist superpowers. The theory itself is completely myopic when it comes to appraising the struggle of the revolutionary proletariat in the imperialist countries. They speculate on the inevitability of a world war on the basis of an underestimation of the revolutionary proletarian forces at work to maintain their own standing on the world stage. Quote, Mao Zedong first talked about his idea of the three-part world in his meeting with Kenneth Kaunda, president of Zambia, on February 22, 1974. He said that there were three worlds. The United States and the Soviet Union belonged to the first world. Japan, Europe, Canada, and Australia made up the second world. Asia, minus Japan, Africa, and Latin America belonged to the third world. China was a part of the third world, because politically and economically it was behind the rich nations. There it could only stay with the poorer ones. 40 years of Chinese Communist Party rule, p. 375, in March 1974, when the Political Bureau convened to choose who should lead the delegation to the United Nations, Jiang Qing disagreed with the decision to choose Deng Xiaoping. On 27 March Mao Zedong wrote to Jiang Qing, "Choosing Deng Xiaoping is my idea. It is best that you do not object." Deng Xiaoping's speech to the special UN session was approved by the Political Bureau and reviewed by Mao Zedong. On 4 April Mao Zedong commented on the speech, "Good. I endorse it." A Glossary of Political Terms of the People's Republic of China, by Kwok-Sin Lee, author, Mary Locke, translator, published by the Chinese University Press, December 30, 1994. To further disprove the Deng Jide revisionist diatribe endorsed by Mao himself, let us refer to the texts of Lenin. Quote, "The characteristic feature of imperialism consists in the whole world, as we now see, being divided into a large number of oppressed nations and an insignificant number of oppressor nations, the latter possessing colossal wealth and powerful armed forces. That distinction has been very clearly revealed of late in the backward and colonial countries, since the imperialist bourgeoisie is doing everything in its power to implant a reformist movement among the oppressed nations too." Lenin, Works, Volume 31, Report of the Commission on the National and the Colonial Questions, pages 240 to 242, Progress Publishers, Moscow, 1958. The message Lenin proclaimed in the national and colonial question seemed to have came full circle nearly 65 years later. In order to combat Soviet Khrushchevite influence, the People's Republic of China, instead of supporting genuine liberation movements worldwide, joined forces with the fascistic NATO powers in Nigeria, Argentina, Thailand and Afghanistan in a non-exhaustive list, while masquerading as the successor proletarian state combating imperialism. But our friend Gonzalo is reluctant to care, nor did he ever. To show how truly infantile and dishonest Dr. Guzman, Gonzalo's real alias, is on the subject of Albania, it should also be mentioned that when he exclaims what happened to the two enemies we have to fight, it was always just words. With Hoji himself it was just words, because he always wrote more about fighting Yankee imperialism than social imperialism. He has busily forgotten to mention the next 4 pages of the 8th Congress, which thoroughly exposes his opportunist slander. Quote, "Today the hegemonic and expansionist policy for the establishment of world domination, the adventurous course for the preparation and incitement of war also characterize Soviet social imperialism, the global strategy of which and especially the ways in which it is applied have likewise become more aggressive. The policy of the Soviet Union has assumed the same aggressive, expansionist, warmongering features as those of the United States of America." Anver Hoxha, Report to the 8th Congress of the Party of Labor of Albania, the 8 Nentori Publishing House, Tirana 1982, pages 169 to 170. Fancy that. So Anver Hoxha did mention Soviet social imperialism as an equal enemy. From this, one of two things remains true. Either A, Dr. Guzman's copy of the 8th Congress fell between the sofa and he had to resort by memory to prove his own point, or has B, been reluctant to mention the facts to his readers and is deliberately slandering his Marxist-Leninist counterpart. But it doesn't stop there. Gonzalo also insinuates that the Albanian Party of Labor abandoned class struggle. Let's take a look. Quote, And if one looks at everything that is said there about the serious economic problems they have, one can see quite clearly the road that Albania has taken. However, it was not Rame Alia, the present leader, who chose this road, but Hoxha himself, who in 1978, in a speech before the electorate, stated that in Albania there were no antagonistic classes. We know very well what that means, because this question has been thoroughly explained by Chairman Mao Zedong. And if we add to this his deceitful attacks on Chairman Mao, on the development of Marxism, what is he but a revisionist? Therefore Albania is not socialist. Unfortunately for Chairman Gonzalo's, coincidentally, unsourced attack, that the notion that the Albanian Party of Labour rejected the existence of antagonistic classes after 1978 is nothing short of a baseless joke, as we can see in the scientific conference on the Marxist-Leninist theoretical thinking of the Party of Labour of Albania and Comrade Enver Hoxha, October 3-4 1983. The position that antagonistic classes and class struggle existed was instilled in the party leadership. Quote, "Our party has always connected the problems of the class struggle closely with the problem of the contradictions in socialism and with the unity of the people with the party. It has rejected as anti-Marxist and anti-dialectical both the view of the Khrushchevite revisionists who accept only unity and deny contradictions and class struggle, and the view of the Maoist revisionists who accept only contradictions and class struggle and deny unity. It has stressed that in socialism it has great importance to accept two kinds of contradictions, antagonistic and non-antagonistic, to make clear the distinction between them, accepting non-antagonistic contradictions as typical for socialism, to strengthen the unity of the people and the party as a new motor force in socialism, through the class struggle and the solution of antagonistic and non-antagonistic contradictions." Rame Alia, Professor Photosami, The Revolution and Socialist Construction in Albania, a living example of the vitality and creative implementation of the Marxist-Leninist theory, The Eight Nentori Publishing House, 1983, Ibid. Pages 31-32. And even if Enver Hoxha said that Albania was fully liquidated of antagonistic classes, it is in fun fact that by the mid-80s Albania was well on its way there. Quote, "Albania is unique in many respects, not least in the fact that differential incomes are limited by law to a maximum of 2:1, a figure which may be compared with current figures in Britain of 6,000:1, making it the most equalitarian society in the world. There is no unemployment, and the right to work and to choose one's occupation is written into the Constitution and applied in practice. There is no inflation, the prices of consumer goods consistently fall as production rises, and the citizen pays no rates or taxes." Albanian Life, number 38/1, 1987. End of audiobook.